New Committee, August 17th at 9:10. Department Head Barbara Leone, Finance Director, Mr. Michael A. Perrone, Borough Manager. Calling the meeting to order, Mr. Scott and I are on the Finance Committee. Mr. Allen will not be joining us. Number 2, any comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda? Please come to the microphones and state your name and address where you live in the borough. Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Margie Swart, and I'm actually a West Goshen Township resident, but I hope you will grant me the courtesy of 3 quick questions. Probably won't take more than 3 minutes.
Okay, any comments that you're going to make? We can't debate at this particular time, but you can make your comments and we will thank you.
Great, thank you. I just noticed that there's $260,000 allocated for a street sweeper in your budget. I think it was 2021. And West Goshen Township also has about that same amount budgeted in their budget. And I'm just curious if the borough and the township have reached out to one another and if it's a possibility to perhaps share that equipment.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, that's one. All right, that was a question. And then also, I noticed that there's $300,000 reallocated from your stormwater fee over to cover, I think, the last payment for a park. And I'm just curious, was that $300 from the stormwater protection fee used for stormwater protection, or was that actually used for equipment in the park? That was another question, but it sounds like I may not get answers. And I'm asking this because I learn a lot from the borough when I study the borough. And our meeting is tonight, and we're talking about stormwater protection fees tonight. So I had hoped just to gather some additional information that might be helpful to the township. And then also the last one is, would love to know just what the status update is on the lawsuit regarding the stormwater fee with the borough. I know that's $100,000 a year or so. So as a resident, I was just wondering if that's been resolved. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. We need to move on to number 3. Discuss the 2022 preliminary budget. Now, Barbara, are you going to give a presentation on how the budget sits currently?
Yeah, I was going to focus on page 2, the summary that I kind of tried to put it in. So I'd like, and if we can go line by line if you'd like, or by department, whichever your choice is.
Okay. The one thing I want to go ask Mr. Perrone at this particular time. Mr. Perrone, Mr. Metric, since Mr. Allen is not here and you have to present a balanced budget in September. Do we have enough information that Mr. Scott and I can pass on to full council for you to do that? Okay, so it's going to be our recommendation, Mr. Scott and I, to send it on the full council, correct?
Yes, unless you want to have another meeting between now and September.
Barb, please. Thank you.
Bill, if you could pull up that version of the budget.
Let me jump in real quick, Barb, just so Bill, Mr. Scott and Mr. Flynn know what we did. The staff has been working on the budget for a number of months. We're in a position, a week or so ago, we were, getting close to where we needed to be. And this meeting was scheduled a little quicker than we thought. So Barb worked her tail off over this past weekend, all the numbers together for everyone. And I asked her to come up with a summary sheet so all of council could focus on one piece of the information, which is our operating budget. So you need to blow that up, Bill, a little bit as best you can. So you can see what it's going to cost the borough to operate with no changes in service for 2022. Then you can see, that's still too small, Bill. I'm wearing glasses and I can't see it. There we go, that's a little better. If you go to the left, or right, excuse me, I'm sorry, you'll see that we're out of bounds by $382,000, 405. The building department, recreation department have asked to hire some additional employees. And then there's an additional patrolman in the budget. And those total salaries and benefits would be take your little hand up there, down the middle, Bill. Add, which says add, see add, there you go. There's an additional 392,000. That's just your operating budget. Okay, so we can go through it line by line item. The biggest increase is in police salaries. The police salaries are by contract 4.25% increases for 2022. The actual patrolman salaries have gone down, but the supervisory salaries have gone up 15%. So that's where we get the big challenge. And then Barb can get into the details of the different departments and what's going on. But the bottom line, if we don't change any services, we have a deficit right now of $382,405. Okay, Barb, you can.
All right, Barb, thank you very much. I guess as we go through this and you present it, the big question Mr. Scott and I have is, since where it says add the additional housing people, recreation and police, that has to be added into the 383,000. So how, without cutting any services, how do we get that $400,000 in balance? That's going to be the big question for the end of the day.
I'd also like to add that this is just the operating. It does not include any capital, which is on page 3, if you'd like to review that now. If we go to the bottom here, the total capital ask throughout all of the departments is a little over $2.8 million.
Barbara, on page 2, what are the fire, wastewater, parking, and stream protection? What are all those numbers pertain to?
So what I'm trying to show on page 2 at the very top is all of the departments within the general fund. That's showing you what the revenues are in 2022 versus 2021. I'm coming up with a variance and then a percentage change. And then I did the same thing for the expenses. Then I have the additional ask of the 4 employees that were asked that are not part of that number above. And then at the bottom, I'm showing the other funds, the fire, the wastewater, parking, and stream protection.
And they are not in the budget, they're in the separate budgets. Is that it?
No, they're all within this whole entire budget, but I was trying to show everything by department. So you have the general fund, the fire, wastewater, parking, and stream protection.
Okay. Now, are they out of balance?
Yes, at this
Yes, they are.
point in time,
And you
they
put it
are
down
because there's
in
no,
parentheses.
if you look on this over to the right, you'll see that they're not in balance because there's no capital included.
Oh, my question to our chair is, So we're underwater more than 700 plus thousand. We also have water on boat.
Positive. No, if you go down to the bottom, that's a positive. They're all positive numbers. It's just because we haven't included any of the capital expenses. There's been no decision on what will be included in the budget or not included. So at this point in time, those other funds are all over at this point in time. They have additional revenues over their, correct, yes. So again, on page 3, these are all the capital projects. These are all the asks that the various department heads, when they went through their presentations, this is a compiled list of everything. And if you go to the bottom there, Bill, you'll see that this totals about $2.8 million, again, which is not included in those numbers.
Since they're just asks and so forth, I'll throw another one on that's been talking. But might as well put it on even if it's just a placeholder. But over at Marshall Square Park, a couple of years, F plan. I've been pushing it because so forth, but Ms. Perron said, bring it up next year's budget. So I'd like to put that on as an ask.
We use this perky pay stuff, Mr. Karowski did over at Hoops Park, and it works very, very well.
I didn't use it there, but they're so proud of it. And the Public Works Committee and have to go through the department, each department, and it would have to go through the commission. It's been to the commission already, but that was 2 years ago when they were favorable, but that's what I got now. Are there any questions from me? Do you have 2 copies of the map? Have one?
So Bill, I recall some of Jeff Bytel's emails. He suggested funding sources as being the stream protection fee money. And I don't know if you were here when Will Williams did his presentation on capital projects for the stream protection fee. That was last year. Did some stuff over there. Will presented a list of projects. I believe they're on the website, Will, all your projects, of certain projects for the borough to use, because the stream protection fee money is kind of trying to push it towards things that will improve our MS4 permit application. We've promised DEP that we would do certain things. So we need to start checking the box to get those credits so the water is cleaner that's going into the streams that DEP has required us to do. So there's another, there's another project up in the corner of Franklin and Marshall at the park on the corner that would do storm protection fee credits that we could use for our MS4 permit. And that's a higher priority than this path project.
Yes. So just going over these capital projects, some of these are already in place or have grants related to them. The first one being Go. This is the borough's match for an approximate grant of $600,000. This is in addition to that, the $72,000 is the match that the borough must put up. And then going down slightly towards the bottom where you see tertiary filtration, that again is a project that Borough Council approved this year, which will continue into next year as well. So some of these projects are ongoing. Wanted to point that out.
Yeah, any of the projects that are ongoing, Barb, I would think we should highlight
Okay.
on there so we know that they're in progress. That way that we don't have to read through, try to
Okay.
figure out what is and what isn't. Just like a yellow line or something. I'm sure Mr. Mann can do that. Go ahead, Barb. Thank you.
If we can move over to page 4, we can go through department by department. So looking at the administration department, which is Department 90, overall revenues have gone up by over about $3.1 million, but of this number, you have almost $871,000 in state aid, which comes in and then goes right out to the pension funds, as well as the Green Light Go grant that I had mentioned before, the $607,000. Looking at expenses, payroll related have increased by about $77,000, and that's because of different allocations that we're doing within the 22 budget versus the 2021. Currently, we are allocating the parking director / assistant manager salary here, as well as the sustainability director's salary, and we have eliminated one position within the finance department. Looking at the non-payroll related expenses, overall, they have decreased $359,000. So looking at the bottom line, there's an overall decrease of $282,000. We move over to page 6, police department.
As I reviewed it, I had trouble because can't tell what departments are what. So can you, I intend to write that in. Yeah, but it doesn't say that.
So if you look at on the table of contents,
Yeah, I saw that. But this is admin.
Yeah.
so on page 6, looking at the police department, revenues have increased by about $263,000. That's mainly coming from an increase in violation of ordinances, as well as East Bradford Township. The contract has increased a little bit, and some overtime and grant revenue. Looking at the next section, payroll related, as Mr. Perone had stated, police salaries and benefits are expected to increase almost $606,000. Again, that's contractual, and the information that we received from our health insurance carrier, expecting an 8% increase in health insurance costs across the board for the borough for 2022.
Barb, explain that one more time. So the $606,000 is the increase in salaries
And benefits.
benefits over the previous year?
Correct.
Okay.
Looking at page 7, overall, the non-payroll related items are going up almost $1.9 million. Again, it's for different allocations that are in the 22 budget versus 2021. We are showing the MMO for the police department in the police line item versus it being in admin last year. And there are also some increases in some software expenses that the police department needs to upload their body cam into the cloud. So if you look at the bottom line, overall non-payroll related expenses are going up, again, almost $1.85 million for a total of almost $2.5 million.
So everything included in the one department is $2,491,000 increase over the previous year.
Correct, and the majority of that is from the allocation of the MMO expense that was previously allocated in admin. Are now accounting for that within the police department budget.
Because it's part of the police department,
Correct.
not part of Public Works,
That's
just
all the,
police.
yes.
Okay.
We go over to page 8, the housing department. Revenues are slightly down for 2022. They're down by about $69,000. The majority of this being within building permits and the rental permits. Looking at payroll-related expenses, this is going down about $26,000. And non-payroll-related expenses are going down almost $10,000, so for a net decrease of almost $36,000. Going over to page 9, the IT department. Looking at payroll-related expenses, these are going up about $11,000. And then non-payroll-related expenses are going up almost $29,000. So for a total increase of $40,218. Going over to page 10, the Public Works Department. Looking at the revenues, revenues are going down by almost $374,000. The biggest piece of this being no grants are within these line items, so that gives us almost a $300,000 variance right there. Looking at payroll-related expenses, they're expected to go up almost $86,000. Again, there is contractual obligations within the salary line items. Looking at the non-payroll related expenses, they're expected to go down just $130,000 for a net total of $43,000 between payroll and non-payroll.
Barb, for the salaries for the administrator and Bill, can you go back 2 pages, please? Yeah, the salaries, director, and we saved the salary for the assistant director for the entire year, correct?
For the entire year so far for 2021, but we do have that within the 22. That's under the street salary line item.
Okay, thank you.
Going over to page 12, the Recreation Department. Again, this is a difference in accounting for 2022 versus 2021. Accounting for the Recreation Department within the general fund versus this being its own separate fund. So looking at the revenues, revenues are expected to decrease by about $71,000. And the majority of this being, since it's housed within the general fund, there's no need for a transfer from the general fund into the recreation fund. Looking at payroll-related expenses, they're expected to go down by about $818. And looking at the non-payroll related expenses, they're expected to go up about $49,000 for a total net of $48,000. Again, within this budget line item, this is expecting most trips and events to happen in 2022 versus the past 2 years. Looking at page 14, the fire department. This is a contractual obligation between the borough and the townships. So the revenue is contracted at about 1.3 million, and we have expenses at about 1.3 million. So this fund is within balance.
Barb, how do we every year give, it's been going up, we started at 80,000 and we're at $100,000 of the ambulance.
Actually,
fellowship.
I was informed that that number is expected to go up in 2022. So we have $120,000 in the budget for.
Okay, under what line item?
That's under the administrative.
Under your department?
Correct. It's account number 48952, Good Fellowship Ambulance. It's under Department 90.
And how do we explain that that money that is going out of the general fund? Mr. Brown?
Well, it can't go out of the fire fund because it's not part of the fire department function. It's a general fund obligation. A special funding source for ambulance.
My question, I guess, I kind of understood that, but the fact is, did council back when it was $80,000, they vote on giving them the 80,000 and now we're up over 100,000?
Yeah,
Did council vote on that?
Council, the first year approved 80,000, and then they came back the following year and said the ask was 100,000. Council approved that also.
Okay, I
And now
Can't remember.
is with the Goodwill or Good Fellowship's in the process of doing, they're getting together a handful of municipalities exactly like the fire department has, so they can split the cost amongst 5, 6 municipalities based on service, population, and with the fire department, we used property values, so if they're going to use that or not. They're in the process of coming up with a new calculation. Kim informed me that preliminarily, it looks like ours would go up to 120. Council doesn't have to fund any of it.
That's true. Is there ever a possibility for that part of the money to be in the fire fund? Would it be easier to do it that way? Have the municipalities that participate in the fire pay the percent? It'd be easier to collect, I imagine, for the ambulance people.
If all the other municipalities agreed to do that, but right now we have a contract we've got a couple more years to go.
Going over to page 15, the wastewater department. Looking at the revenues, revenues are expected to go down about 165,800. Again, this is the biggest variance here being dropping down the tap-in fees. Looking at the payroll-related expenses, they're expected to go up about 77,709. Looking over at page 16, the non-payroll related items are expected to go down 950,595 for a total net of 872,886. And again, at this point in time, this fund has no capital expenditures within it. Looking at page 17, the parking fund. Revenues are expected to increase about $273,500. The big increases are coming in parking ticket income as well as parking meter revenue. Looking at payroll-related expenses, they're expected to decrease about $22,536. And over on page 18, non-payroll related items are expected to decrease about $832,220 for a net decrease of $854,755.
Shouldn't the administration of that fund drop down at least $50,000 for the administrator moving over to a different position?
Yeah, if you look on page 17, you will see a variance there of $50,000
Okay,
since we're not, allocating that right there.
right. Thank you.
Looking at page 19, the Highway Aid Fund, we're expecting revenues to be about $651,000 for an increase of $245,715. That's because there's a carryover from this year into 2022. We did try to take a look at some of the line items within the Public Works Department to try to allocate them from Public Works into the liquid fuels. So we came up with paving project monies to be about $426,000. And then the other line items from Public Works into the highway aid. So we have expenses of $651,000. So this fund is in balance.
Bill, can you move a little bit to the right so I can see what those words say? The other way, to my left. You're right. Where is the line striping and stuff like that? And
We have that all within maintenance of roads, which is GL line item 43800. It's the $75,000.
does that include the thermoplast machine that we were supposed to buy, I think this year or last year? Or did
No,
we
it does
just
not.
delete it? We didn't buy that piece of equipment?
To my knowledge, no, and it's not included in this as well.
So the 75,000 is just materials?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Moving over to page 20, the Stream Protection Fund. Revenues are expected to decrease about $909,000, and that's because we had a large carryover in 2021 versus 2022. Big part of that being carrying over money for the John O'Green project that we just got the final invoice on. Looking down at the operating expenses right now, there's a variance of about $1.2 million, but this fund does not include any of the capital expenses. So what I'm showing here is all administration. We need to add in the capital expenses for this fund to be in balance. And that's what was on page 2, the list of asks for that. And that's every department at this point in time.
Are you finished your presentation?
I am, yes.
Okay, I'm going to do just a little bit of West Minor Street math. That's where I live. On page 2, I see you said it was $300,000 out of balance, correct?
Correct, yes.
And then for the capital expenses, 2.8 million. So in order to do any of the projects that are on the capital expenses, council has to pick what projects they want to do for 2022.
No,
So- No?
not necessarily. There's a lot of capital projects that have money coming from segregated funds, like the $1 million project for the Tartarian filter system. That money comes from the sewer fund. And
Yeah, Barb pointed out that we had 2 ongoing projects. It would be the
Right.
first one and then the filtration
but-
system.
but their funding is not coming from the general fund.
Okay, all right,
That's,
That's-
you have to line up where the money's coming from.
okay.
Talking about, 2.8 million is not coming from the general fund.
Right, okay.
Like you have parking meter, upgrades, that's coming from the parking fund. Sludge recycling pump replacement, digester, that's sewer fund money.
So that, it'd actually be helpful then for council to determine which ones they want to add into capital for 2022, right? Additional to what's already. Yeah, it'd be easier to figure out where it goes at that point. Because what I'm getting at is, in order for us to do certain projects that are on there that don't have funding source, plus the new hires that are being asked for, we're roughly, round numbers, about $3 million short. Is that a fair assessment? Okay, yeah, yeah.
You just said $3 million. We were talking yesterday, Barb and Sean and I, about real estate revenues and where they are, where they aren't. And I remember when Ernie McNeely was here, he used to harp on how many properties in the borough are tax exempt. And in this year's audit, well, if you get a chance to look at it on page 13, there's a little section on that topic. It says the borough has an initial certified taxable value of $760 million for 2020, which is up about 1% from the previous year. Of the taxable properties in the borough, 61.53 of the real estate taxes is paid by residential properties, 37.5 by commercial, and about 0.6% by industry properties. And it goes on to say that the millage rate, when adopting the general fund budget for calendar year 2020, the borough kept the millage rate the same as 19. The millage rate for 20 was 6.96. We raised it last year. That's your general fund revenue is around 18 million. Of the tax exempt properties, the valuation of those properties is $395 million. That's the property value. So if they paid the tax back in 2020, they would have paid us $3 million. So that's what we're missing from tax exempt properties. It's a big hit to the borough. And there's no way of really making that out. We have a couple properties that, like Barclay Friends, they pay their full share of property tax even though they're exempt. But the county, the university, the hospital are real big value buildings that, you don't get any money. Just something to put back in the back of your head. Not that we can do anything about it, so.
All right, so the administration, since we've come to at the end of the presentation, I guess what we don't have all the information we need to determine how far out of balance we really are based on the capital projects and the existing $382,000. We know it's $382,000, but we don't know, adding in the personnel, the new hires, that's another 170-some thousand, plus the any capital projects. So if you round it up, roughly, I'm trying to figure out what we're short. Well, Mr. Scott, you can chime in with this, but if you look at page 2, the largest expense that we have is the police department, which is a lot of it's contractual, so there's not a heck of a lot you can do with that. That's going to go up $600,000 just in 1 year. We just hired 3 police officers. We just promoted a bunch of individuals in the higher pay brackets as well. Recreation, they're running with 1 person. I know we're not doing very much in recreation. Housing is running lean, and Bill Mann doesn't spend any money, hardly at all. Public Works, they're pretty flat. It's hard to say that we can cut anything that we didn't cut last year. We spent months last year trying to whittle it down. I think what council has to do is look at the 382, look at the additional people and staffing, add all that up to make an overall nut, and then look at the capital expenses, capital projects that we have to fund, and present that to council and see how they want to fund it. At this particular time, as Dale said from Mealy, our revenues aren't high enough to carry our expenses. Been that way for the last 3 years, I believe. So that's the big thing. Revenues are not keeping up with expenses. So we have to come up with a funding base for 2022 budget. So if Mr. Allen was here, he would have come up with some ideas, I'm sure. But I think that's what we need to do, present to council what the ask is. And I don't know how we get all council together to make the decision, because, you know, it has to be done before September. So am I on the right path with this?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out for the capital projects, for the general fund, I come up with a number of about $800,000. For sewer, it's about 1.2 million. For parking, 342,000, and then stream protection is 526, just for the record. So it's about 800,000 for general fund. And they asked for the new employee as well. That's about 400,000. That takes you up to around 1.5.
We're in the process. I asked Will Williams to work with Public Works and Barb, trying to figure out what our true cost for trash collection is. The borough, Bill's been around long enough to know the history. We, contracted it out to a third-party company. But we are still in the business. I don't think the borough wants to get out of the business of providing that service ourselves, but there might be, we can fund it differently. Instead of using general fund money, we could figure out what it costs, and impose a trash fee across the board. You know exactly where the money's going, how much it costs. Guarantee, most of our surrounding townships charge a fee, and it's anywhere from $300 to $400 a year. The average household in the borough pays about $900 in total taxes. Our taxes are low. As soon as you raise them, everybody's going to yell they're not low, but they, relatively speaking, they're low based on the services you get.
Yeah, the reviewing, looking at the new hires as well. I know we can't hire a part-time patrol person because it just wouldn't work that way because of rotations. But the housing people and the recreation department, instead of bringing those employees on as full-time employees, we could hire them at part-time rate without paying benefits and have them work, 25 to 30 hours a week. That would help also. Trash thing would help a little bit. It's, we can't, year after year, what happens is year after year that you've been here, Mr. Perone, we keep cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting and finally, we're down to where very difficult to cut anymore because you've taken all the fat off the bone, okay? We're at the position that Mr. Metric's going to have to deal with is, we got to put some fat back on the bone. And, it's not very popular, so I'm not going to mention what the, should do, but it's an option. Funding the trash will help, but the property tax millage just isn't high enough. They carry the essential services that we have in this borough, and we give excellent service from the police department all the way down to the wastewater treatment plant and Parks and Rec and Public Works, and IT. We go above and beyond what most municipalities do. So it's a serious, I think we've come to a Jesus meeting, for 2022. It's not good, but, it wasn't good last year when we only got $300,000 in our tax increase. And that wasn't even enough to take care of the financial obligation for the police department. So, I mean, we helped a little bit, but it didn't do any good. So that's pretty much where I got.
Our Public Works collects the trash, but we charge the residents for that service. Is that what you're talking about?
You don't currently, if you have extra trash, you can buy a trash bag, $3.
Well, what was it you were suggesting?
Yeah, I'm not just saying this is a potential. Municipalities are permitted to charge a separate trash fee to use the service. Found out, which we're in the process of what our expenses are, minus our revenues from the $3 bags, we can figure out what the cost of trash collection is. And once you figure out that cost, you divide it by the number of households that use the service, but with a number they getting hours. You got to remember, properties in the borough who don't use trash collection, they're already paying private haulers. Apartment buildings, most commercial buildings, all the restaurants, they don't get the service from the borough, but their tax dollars go to supplement that.
What you're suggesting is not privatization of trash collection. It's a way to get people to pay for it. Interesting.
Remember, everything that you say will be held against you because you're going to be retired next year. So you'll be voting for things that you're going to have to pay for as well as I.
Doesn't that give me more? Suggest any other?
Absolutely, yes.
May I ask this? The different departments were vetted in different committees. Has all that taken place already? All right. So this is the result of that. I mean,
Well, yeah, we went through the exercise.
Yeah.
I don't believe there was any committee that added or subtracted anything from what was proposed. All the department heads are here. Correct me if I'm wrong. So whatever was presented is what's in the budget. So
Okay.
nobody told us to take anything out.
so,
That's Braceland asking a bunch of questions.
Well, okay, so work session tonight, don't we? Well, I don't think this is near completion, this process, but is there anything that we covered that might be brought up at the work session tonight?
Well, the,
For discussion purposes only, not the
Yeah.
whole schmear, but.
yeah, I think maybe, your committee can report to council. You met today and uh, went over the operating budget, potential capital projects. I would strongly suggest that there be a special council meeting to go over the budget prior to September. Kind of like what we're doing today, because I mean, council has to make some decisions on where you want to go. I mean, we either have to find new revenue, or you have to cut something. I think Jim was going to suggest getting rid of all the detectives. Oh, I just woke him up, see that?
You know you woke him up because he grabbed his glasses. Because he can't hear without his glasses being on, either can I. It's,
But, that's the bottom line is, Bernie, you're right. The last 3-4 years, revenues have not kept up with general fund expenses. But we've been supplementing the general fund other ways. Just can't keep doing that. I mean, salaries, the whole salary line just in the police department, $600,000. So if you just looked at that, how are you going to fund that every year going forward? To do something every year to supplement those increases.
It seemed to me that good shape in terms to not any service.
no, the report from the ad hoc committee was outstanding. And it basically said that the police department is doing everything they're supposed to do within their realm of business. And they're properly staffed and trained. And the fact of the matter is, and as Mr. Pro mentioned, I mean, it's not a secret. It costs money for good policing. And with the contract, I can't imagine, it's going to expire probably in a year or two. Currently, it's going up this year, $600,000 just for labor and benefits. So every year, we have to add $600,000 of revenue into the stream in order to cover the good police department that we have. So, and everything that's on the capital projects list are things that we've put off or we delayed, or they could be new. We're, like I said, we're in a position where we have to cut bait because we've lowered every expectation and funded things that we move things around to balance things out. Like, for example, John O'Green, some things aren't going to be done. The $300,000, the projects will be done in 2022, but we had that line item that we could actually pay the unexpected bill that we got from the John O'Green. That can't continue to happen. We need to start having a cash surplus in the borough in order for the borough to work. You can't run your checking account dry every year. So 2021's budget, I think we did a really good job, we're going to end up with a slight amount of money in the kitty in December, maybe. And then going into 2022, we may have to revisit the tax anticipation note again because we won't have enough money to cover the expenses for January, February, March. So we can't keep doing that every year. And it's, we have to come up with a game plan on how we're going to fund this general fund. Thanks, Bart. Like I said, it'll help council to be able to look at numbers. For example, the $300,000, the added expenses for capital projects, and the new hires. Hopefully, we can afford them full-time, if not part-time. And then that would be the overall, I mean, that's what council is going to want to know. How much are we short to do? What do we need to do to come up with the amount of money? So, you're hopefully at $3 million to find a revenue source for. We found out that 6% last year gave us $300,000. So that didn't work. Maybe charging for trash pickup as a separate line item on Public Works. Thank you. Mr. Scott, do you have anything?
Yes, recommending cuts. Well, as you're not. Say?
I think everything's been cut that we can cut. Every department up here in administration is operating with less people than we were before. Yeah, I mean, in September, I got to give you all of council a budget, okay? I don't want to do what we did last year, say, there's a 34% tax increase. I don't think we want to do that and freak everybody out. I think we need a game plan to have a balanced budget for September. And if it includes a tax increase, a sewer rate increase, or impose a trash fee, or if Borough Council says, hey, listen, we're going to cut this department, that department, this department, that everything's on the table. But council needs to pick and choose what services you want. But, as an example, in the recreation department budget, we have in there revenue for a restaurant festival. Revenue or expenses, and both. There's both, revenue and expenses. Keith's not sure if he can run a restaurant festival with one person. So the Borough Council, you got to make a decision. Do you want to have a restaurant festival the way we've typically had it? Or do we want to find another way of doing it? I've talked to the bid. They're kind of lukewarm about helping out with it. I called like the Media Borough. Their business community runs their restaurant festival and Super Sunday that they have. Doesn't look like our restaurants are interested in doing it. So, but it's still an ongoing discussion. But those types of things, you can't expect everything to be the same. Not have the employees and the staff to make it work. That's up to you guys. I'm available whenever.
Why don't we bring that up tonight during the work session? To have council, that would probably have to be at nighttime because everybody basically works. Three of us, I believe. So.
Just one clarification, when you said September, do you mean we should have a meeting
Yeah, I think the meeting wouldn't take all that long, Mr. Scott, based on not going through everything we really went through today. Page 2, page 3 are the most important things that Mr. Perone and Mr. Metric and Ms. Leonti have to actually show a snapshot. And if somebody wants to delve into, you know, I don't know, how many snow blowers we need down the thing, we can go to that page. But it's 2022. We project a negative number of whatever that negative number is, and we need to project a financing stream to cover that nut. Or what does council want to do as far as, if that's the case of funding it, or do they want to start chopping? There's really no place to chop anymore. We're down pretty low.
Version, but updated somewhat. Continue working it.
We should have it before that, because Ms. Leonti and Mr. Metric and Mr. Prone has to, after we decide as a council what we want to do, they got to rework the budget again and have it prepared for the next night, correct? Yeah, so it's not good to meet that. It's good to meet probably the of August or early September.
This week is council week. August.
Yeah, I mean, last year, you all met like once a week. Um, because the budget was so out of whack. Because you were looking at a 34% tax increase too. Met and worked pretty hard to chop things out. If the rest of the Borough Council is not willing to commit to come, then maybe the Finance Committee is just going to have to come up with recommendations to give to council in September too, just as option two.
Yeah, we'll know that tonight when I'm telling them, we've hit a point in the discussion that we need to have full council to weigh in on. Just have to set a date and time next week to get together. And if you can't attend in person, you know, Mr. Mann can bring you in virtually, just like Star Trek.
You're going to have numbers for us.
Yeah, to keep it afloat, the $300,000, that puts us right in the same barrel that we're in now. Okay, because, yeah, for every year we're chasing our tails on this thing, so be nice not to have to do that year after year. Now, what the discussion will be was, with Mr. Metric, the what if. What if parking comes back? What if the sewer flushes come back? What if, well, you know what? The Delta variant is running crazy right now. The what ifs may not happen. So we have to prepare like we're doing with today, the worst case scenario. We're never going to be flush with cash. If that's the case, it'd be a wonderful thing. And we're always pinching pennies to get through the year, which is not good. Because Sean Mitchell will show up with a pump that breaks, that's been there 60 years for $40,000. And then we got to figure out how we're going to fund that $40,000. That shouldn't be the way we run a business. We should have the money somewhere to have the availability. So things break. People always want to pay raise, and good people deserve pay raises. So it's important to do it.
May I ask, to go back to one point, what is the percentage of non-ratables? All right, now does that mean that 34% of what? 100% would be what? Not the number, but it's You know, for a long time, I thought it was based on the property, like square footage and that sort of thing. The assessed value.
Can you introduce yourself? We haven't heard from you all day. Well, yeah, you're correct. Mr. Eli Khan sold the 313 West Market Street to the county. Yeah, so that, we lost $190,000 in cash from Mr. Eli Khan because the county bought the building. But what the county felt sorry for the bid, Business Improvement District. They continue to pay the Business Improvement District their money for the next, I think, 5 years. They've committed to it, where they have not committed any money to the borough at all. So, which is understandable because they're tax exempt. But just losing 313 West Market Street. Now, if someone's going to say, well, we're going to pick up the distribution center, well, that's going to take a year, at least a year to get that thing under control. So Mr. Khan said, oh, I'm going to pay you $137,000 a year in taxes. Well, it's almost like you win one, you lose one. So, but at least that property won't go to the county again. So, all right, Mr. Scott, you have any more questions?
What would,
Yeah, we'll ask council tonight, when they want to have a full council meeting for the information, that's going to be fine tuned by the finance department and by administration. At that particular time, council will have to decide how they want to proceed with, revenue sharing or revenue increases, but cover the expenses. So,
yeah, the other thing that I want to ask, these separate funds, what do you call them? Discrete funds? Yeah, how do you characterize them? They are, Pardon?
enterprise funds.
is that what they are? All of them?
Just the sewer and the parking are enterprise funds.
What about like the highway fund?
That's a part of the governmental funds. It's a separate funding source, but it's not an enterprise fund.
All right, and And are those reflected in this, what you've given us today?
Yes.
Yeah, number each two. But she broke them down on, that's why Ms. Leonti broke them down, so you could actually see what each one of the captioned funds are.
Page 2. Fire, wastewater, parking, and stream?
That's correct, yes, yes. The,
Okay.
but the only, I'm going to use the word true enterprise fund is the parking fund, because we're allowed to withdraw money from the parking fund. We don't take any money out of fire, wastewater, or stream protection to use for the general fund. Am I correct?
We do make transfers from the wastewater fund to fund any expenses that the general fund pays for, as well as parking.
Yeah, okay, that's what I actually meant, but yeah.
Our Biden money has come and gone, or
No,
we haven't gotten it yet?
no, we've gotten the Biden money, one half of it. We got roughly slightly under $1 million. And next year we'll receive the other stipend, $1 million. Out of that first initial money, council's agreed, pending our DEP approval, for the M4, I believe it is, to buy the street sweeper, which is $266,000, and fix the other one at $11,000. And then $300,000 is going to go for water conservation or whatever down at the Everhart Park.
And
230. Okay.
that consumes that, this year's allotment?
No. About half of it.
Okay. Well, so we have the other half to apply to this budget? Specific projects that fit the, okay.
Yeah,
What is the answer?
the answer is that right. Yeah, there's more strings attached to this money that comes from Biden or the federal government
Yeah.
than a mozzarella stick. Because you have to, there's such a criteria to follow in order to spend the money. It has to go for, like Barbara explained, infrastructure, technology, wastewater or something like that. So there were 6 things.
Let's give it back.
Not this week. any of our department heads have any questions at all? Did we ask the right questions to try to get through the budget? That's the main thing for the team. Didn't ask the right questions. I wish you would share it with us. That way there, when we get in front of full council, it's not, won't be a surprise. So Chief, please, and if anybody has any questions at all, it's important. That's why you're here.
Thank you. And just briefly, certainly understand the position you're in currently, but page 2, reflecting here has me a bit confused. For the past decade plus, we've been capped at 44 police officers. We asked for 44 police officers this year. That was the ask. So we're not looking to add a police officer for 2022. I know we're currently one vacant spot. That's part of the 2021 budget, is the ask for the 2022 budget. So we're looking to maintain the complement of 44. We're not looking to add a police officer to make it 45. I think that's understood. I just want to make sure that I point that out. No, we had 44 budgeted for this year, and we agreed to forego 2.5 officers for the year as part of our participation to the borough's recovery. We've since got back 3 police officers now, but that's because we're about to capture an officer's salary due to military commitment, and we have a senior corporal retiring about January 1st. So that meshes together to make that the opportunity to grab a 3rd officer that we did in July. So the ask moving forward is not to gain a police officer, it's to maintain our complement of 4. Original, yeah, the patrolman plus administration plus supervisors, the ask was 44. Yep. Six. Correct. The ask was for 34. I'm not sure where we're at on this piece. It's the first time I'm seeing it today. So, yeah.
Yeah, Barb's making notes, and she'll be able to determine how many people were in that line item. Yeah, 'cause
Well, I'm saying we can still have that discussion about that spot, but the ask when we came into committees was our ask is 44. Yeah.
so we can
Total complement.
we can remove the one ask for the one body.
Well, unless Barb changed to reflect the vacancy. We submitted a 44 employee, 1 vacant spot is noted in there with salary capture. There's 1 position that says new hire with no name attached. Okay. Okay.
So Barb, is your number you have on there correct? Okay. Okay, yeah, because the person that's being deployed militarily will take the spot of the retiring corporal 2022, correct? Is that the way I'm understanding?
Well, if we get approved for the 44, then we would be trying to fill those positions, but We're not going to be able to do that until late 22 at best, due to an expiring list. So
Okay.
we are going to have vacancies in next
Okay.
year.
All right,
But we have 2 officers retiring, and we have an officer that's going to be deployed till, well, beginning 10 months, beginning September,
Right.
September 1.
great day.
Yeah.
That's a holy day of obligation.
Yeah.
That's my
Good.
birthday.
Thank you.
Chief, Jim, did you see Mr. Ammon's memo?
I did. Well, I mean, obviously, it's welcome news for the police department because we did put a lot of effort into that study to provide the Financial Advisory Committee with accurate numbers and details. We feel that we continue to be right-sized. If anything, I feel that we're 1 down. We should be 45, but I wouldn't ask for that right now. So I think 44 is right-sized where we're at. I'd like to maintain that if at all possible, knowing that we're going to lose officers in January and due to retirement and due to an expiring list and having to retest and that whole process, we're going to go the better part of 22 with a couple positions down. I would agree with the memo, yeah. Thank you.
Any other department heads have any questions? So moved. Meeting's adjourned.